Hello everyone, welcome back to our Rippling Passion podcast. This is the second season of the podcast. We had a blast filming the first season, so now we're gonna do one episode a month. Doing I think every week was a little bit of work for us, so let's try to bring in more value. But yeah, today we have with us a dear friend of mine from Logos and from high school, and we got to know each other a little bit through thick and thin, and I'm glad to have him on the podcast. He's from the States and he's here for a week, so I thought, you know what, let's sit down, have some questions, and maybe we'll look back, in 10 years and ask what were we doing on this podcast. But yeah, man, what's up? Good, why don't you give it like a short and brief introduction?
Yeah,
who you are.
Sure. So, correct you. I'm actually from Cambodia.
All right.
Just a correction.
Okay.
So yeah, born and raised here, and then I was in Logos all throughout high school. I met this guy in about 10th grade, I think. I didn't have a ride home. He offered me to ride home in that Chevy of yours. And those are the days. So, after high school, I was just really thinking about what I really wanted to do. I came from kind of an academic background. My dad was a professor. He was, teaching and working in finance for a little bit before he moved here. So naturally, I gravitated towards that. But also, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. All I knew back then was I liked math. I like econ. What's a good combo of that? So when I got accepted to school, my alma mater, UW-Madison, big plug, go Badgers. It's a family legacy. But I just looked at the classes and finance seemed to be right. Needs a lot of math, needs a lot of econ. And I was like, okay, I'll do that. And so that's what I did. Had a few internship experiences there, but something I didn't really feel right just being in just finance. So I kind of followed my heart. I did more math stuff.
Right.
And eventually I landed this job in St. Louis as an investment analyst. Mainly because the job requires more of the quantitative skills in math and finance, coding and stuff like that. So, I took the opportunity. So moved to St. Louis recently, only got 4 months ago. So now I'm settled down in St. Louis with my girlfriend. She's working as a consultant, so she's traveling a lot. I'm working a lot, but just grinding right now while we have the time. We're in our 20s.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, I was doing a little bit of research into the company that you work at, and to be honest, I still don't know what exactly you guys do. But then it's also interesting, right? Because I think initially, I kind of throughout your college and even, I kind of see the last part of kind of going into more quantitative and programming. So what made you transition into maybe more of the coding part? Or was that an expectation that you had, majoring in finance?
I guess I can tell you a little bit about my career path, how I got to where I got.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So I started on finance. First year I didn't really think too much about my career. I was just having fun. It was college. It was first year. I just wanted to meet new people. It was a new city. Right. So that's what I did. But one thing I never let go was my academics. I always took that really, really seriously. Maybe even to an unhealthy amount. But I took that very seriously. So a year went by. And, Cambodia was still stuck in my head. I lived there for 18 years. Yeah. So that was all I was really thinking about. It was that I could work hard so I could come home and have a great time with my friends and family. That's what I did. Second year I went back. Things were a little different, things things were changing back home.
Right.
I started thinking really hard about where's home, And so I was like, wow, I'm not a kid anymore. I kind of need to start thinking for myself what I want to do.
Yeah.
And so I decided, what do I like? I like finance, and then, tech is big. I didn't do computer science because I didn't really understand it back then. Big regret. But so I did finance and information systems, right?
Right.
Because I was like, well, I don't know too much about computer science, but I like IT. I like tech. I like databases and stuff. So I'll do that. And so that's what I did.
Yeah.
And as a requirement for information systems, I took a coding class. And man, it just clicked with me. I fell in love with it.
Right. Yeah. It's okay. Come on.
Yeah. So I fell in love with it, and so I didn't really think too much about it. That was it. I went along, and so when I started getting more deep into my finance classes, a lot of things didn't make sense to me, you know. There's a lot of career paths in finance you can take. You can just go work as, you know, managing money. You can go to investment banking. I didn't really care too much about that. I was just doing it for the sake of doing it, you know. I liked the topic, I liked the materials, and things didn't make sense.
Yeah.
And I was like, why? Well, I didn't take enough math. All right. So I took one and an extra math class.
Right.
Okay, things started to make sense a little bit more.
Does it?
But not all of it, you know? Yeah. And so I was like, oh my God, I'll take another math class. Next thing you know, I'm in linear algebra. Then next thing you know, I took differential equations. And then eventually it was just like, wow, I know nothing about finance. This is crazy. This is a lot deeper than I thought.
Right.
And so now I've gone too deep in the technical end, right? I can't work in regular money management anymore. Yeah. Because it's just not the same. You know, I like, it's just not as technical, and I'm a technical guy. So I've had to talk to a lot of professors about it and stuff. And I was really seriously thinking about, man, I should have just done that. And then I had an internship doing corporate finance. Corporate finance is doing finance for a regular company, right? Right. So I interned at Dell doing their corporate finance program.
Yeah. Was it a lot different from what you were doing now?
Completely different. All it was just and I was placed in more like the accounting role. And that was like, that's like what you think when you think of finance, right? More accounting stuff. And so I was doing that, and I was like, this isn't really what I wanted to do. Like, you know, this isn't all like the capital management stuff. Right. So I was like, oh, okay, this is crazy. I'm a junior. This was supposed to be the internship that I had everything. And it wasn't. Right. So I was like, well, life's kind of too short to regret things. Talking to more professors, I said, okay, you know what? I'm gonna just major in math. Oh. So I took on an applied math major, and I was doing it, and then we came to Cambodia together. Right. We quarantined together, and you saw me doing all those proofs and stuff, and it was just like, well, this is a little intense. I've maybe taken it a little too far. Yeah.
And you liked that?
I liked it. It was fun. It was fun. And then, you know, by that time, I already taken my, you know, second coding class or whatever. And then I started discovering this field called quantitative finance. It's like when you deal with like trading that's algorithmic, so you can write code and stuff to trade for you, given a certain logic. There are, you know, more quantitative models and stuff. So like with the math part kind of taken care of a little bit, you know, I barely just scratched the surface. But these papers started making sense to me. Academic papers and stuff, I started reading through them, they start to make sense. So then I was like, wow, this is great. But now I need to think about my career. I'm about to graduate. What am I gonna do? Right. So, you know, I talked to a few people in Cambodia. I did that my last semester in Cambodia. And I was just talking to people, and originally I was supposed to take an extra semester because of that math major. Right. And people were like, you know, you don't really need to, just declare a minor, just graduate. And so I did that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I did that.
I remember that.
Right. And I didn't know what I was gonna do. You know, I was lost. I needed a job. I was like really scared for my future. I was in panic mode. And I don't know. You know, I was in my last finance class. A speaker came to talk to us. Right. And he talked. It was from NISA, and he was, you know, at the very end of it, he gave his talk and stuff. And at the very end of it, he was like, "We're looking for analysts. We have a few positions open." Right. You know, then later that night, I don't know what came to me, but I just reached out to him, and then he reached back out. He asked my resume. We chit chatted. Right. And then you know, here I am now. So that's kind of how I got to be. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we don't talk about that a lot, especially kind of that transition of like, okay, we're finishing up college, right? And now moving into the corporate world. Yeah, that's such a hard transition. Honestly, it's like it was a tough time, even for me. Like I was thinking back, and like the pressure of people around you getting, even just looking around, like your peers, internships, and all these things. It was interesting, and I guess like for kind of another question going alongside of expectations and reality, right? I guess what is it like? Because you know, like the finance industry is probably the most matured, not the most, but mature in the U.S., right? And you know, you see all these movies like, I don't know, Wolf of Wall Street, you know, like all these crazy things that happen. So what is it? Is it more? What is it like to work in a company that manages 500 billion? I know you're gonna correct me on this, but go ahead.
So like You know, there's fund managers, right? You know, you collect a fund and you manage it.
Right.
Depends on what type of management you're doing. So, I mean, all those crazy movies and stuff that you're watching and seeing, you're probably in more of like the investment banking world and deal making, right? And so that's one side of it. That's, I guess you can call it like, there's two sides of finance, buy side and sell side.
Buy side and sell side.
Yeah. Sell side is like the salesman of finance or the investment bankers, you know, they value thing and they try to sell it to the buy side. The buy side is the people that buy it to, you know, manage money. Right. People gave them money. It's a fund. They have to manage that fund somehow.
Right.
So all those crazy movies and stuff, you're seeing high finance. That's high finance. You know, people call it finance.
Right. Finance.
As they say it. Yeah. And you know, like maybe that certain parts of it are true. I would say, but you know, not all of it.
Right.
You know, it's like very exaggerated.
Yeah.
The work culture in maybe you're probably thinking of like New York. That's true if you're working for a bank or something like that.
Right.
You know, but for most people, like they just want to work, gain experience in a fund, and that you know that culture may not be true. So in my company, when you say $500 billion in management, it's actually like an actual money that clients would give us to manage.
Right.
It's only about 300 something billion, but then the rest is we take, what do you call it? Like, I guess the easy way to say it, we're taking bets, but then we're not. We're hedging.
Right.
We're hedging our risk away.
Yeah. Well, what does that mean? Just to explain.
It means that, let's say you are like, I guess I can give you a really simple example is you have an interest rate. Maybe you take on a loan and it's a floating rate loan, which means that you pay whatever the market shows. So what you pay, you don't know it's floating, right? Okay. And you don't want that.
Right.
You want fixed.
Yeah.
You can enter a swap.
Right.
Like that's like.
Okay.
You pay fixed, and then and then you get floating type of thing, you know?
Yeah.
So you can enter crazy contracts like that, but like you have to have an underlying, like. You can trade the interest rates for what? Like worth of what? 10 million, 100 million?
Okay.
That's notional. The notional is not actually traded. It's just there for calculation.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I hope it's making sense to you guys. But I mean, it's not really making sense, right?
But basically, basically it's like I don't know an easy way to explain it. You know, this stuff is complicated. I have a hard time understanding it myself. But so, you know, that's how we manage money. But my company we're managing pensions.
Yeah.
So a lot of corporations in America have pensions, like when people retire, you have to pay them out a certain amount. That's something the company owes.
Right.
So then the company will give us assets so that we can match how much they owe.
Got it.
Yeah.
So if you're doing a bad job, they don't get their retirement fund.
If we're doing a bad job, they'll take their money and go to a different asset manager.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I wanted to also get like I guess touch into that, just like also how do you stand out as like an applicant in like a pretty competitive space, right? But also I guess one thing that I think can be encouraging for the people maybe who are in finance and maybe considering going into deeper math is you were mentioning, you know, maybe I asked you, you know, what classes did you take on programming, right? And so like, let's say they want to grow their skills on that and maybe get themselves ready for the analytics and programming. Like what kind of resources can they use to really grow themselves? And go ahead.
So like expectation versus reality, right? What makes a candidate stand out? I didn't get to where I am today by following the traditional path of finance. You know, I could just take in all my finance classes, check all the boxes, get all the A's. Right. And then what does that do? I'm just like any other candidate. Yeah. Right? Like, there's like, how would I stand out? I took that leap of faith and just, you know, I did math because I liked it. You know, it's just a coincidence that made me stand out compared to people who didn't. Right. So like, that's what I was just doing, man. I was just like following my heart, like as cliche as it is. I was just taking what I like, you know. If you think about it, if you're someone who's reviewing applications for finance or computer science or something like that, right? like what's gonna stand out to you more? Someone who checks all the boxes or someone who took a non-traditional route?
Right.
Let's say that you're a marketer,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're a marketing professional.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say someone applied to your firm.
Right.
Maybe they went to a marketing program somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And they have experience in like SEO stuff and
Right.
you know, and campaigns. But then let's say that you have another applicant and he is a mechanical engineer.
Mm-hmm.
He spent his experience doing a bunch of mechanical engineering stuff.
Right.
But he ended up decided to start his own business or whatever,
Mm.
and he's doing a lot of his own campaigning and he's learning marketing on his own side.
Yeah.
And he has just as much experience as the new guy who's in marketing,
Yeah.
right? But he came to it on his own interest and his own practice.
Right.
So who's gonna stand out to you more?
Yeah. You're right.
You know, just
Yeah.
like things like that. So I guess, you know, advice is like, yeah, coding is kind of a hard place to start, but it doesn't have to be there. You know, you can do more technical things. Don't take just the traditional classes. Go out of your way and take the more, you know, harder generic classes. Maybe, I don't know, maybe instead of you're taking your regular marketing classes, go take a class on really how search engine optimization works or something like that,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. Does your firm need marketing? I'm kidding.
I don't know. I haven't even met a marketer.
I'm kidding. Yeah. I think that's a good point, right? And then even with, you know, I mean, this podcast is called Rippling Passion, right? I think if you're really passionate about that, you could just feel that, wow, this person really likes this thing, right? They're in and out, and I could definitely see, you know, when you were doing the coding, when you were like doing the math, I could just see, wow, you're really into this. And
Because like when they ask you technical questions in interviews, are you just like memorizing it, or are you like really interested and you can answer it? You know,
Right.
they can tell the difference.
Yeah. Okay. And another insight, I guess, since you probably have some insights in the financial industry, and I thought, where do you think the financial industry is heading in the States, and how much of that is going to be kind of aligned? How much of that will we see here in Cambodia? Right? Is it totally different market, or
Right.
What are your thoughts?
So I guess starting off in America, you know, there's you know, I'm excluding a lot of finance, and it's wrong to generalize a whole. So I'll just refer to like money managers, I guess high finance. I hate that word. I hate high finance. But yeah, I guess the big thing that, you know, I realized was that you probably heard about it, the quant revolution. It's like you get a lot more non-traditional finance background now working in finance and investments and all that, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, back in the day, probably like it was a lot more simple. You did finance math or like econ math, or just regular finance,
Right.
and you just go and you're a value investor, right? Now you have all of these trends and like analysis and algorithmic way of thinking. Yeah, well, derivatives have always been there, but you know, quants have taken derivatives to a whole different level with the way that they're hedging things. So that's like the biggest thing that I see right now is that you're gonna see a lot more non-traditional finance people in finance, and
so less of the Wolf of Wall Street kind of.
well, it's always there, you know, value investing. Well, Wolf on Wall Street, he was a pump and dump scheme. He was a scam.
Don't look at that and want to get into finance. That's a bad excuse.
That's a horrible excuse. You should never do something for the money. And like that's SEC fines will go up through the roof. Don't do that.
Yeah.
So that's America. In Cambodia, right? I guess like the markets are starting to develop, but there's not really an exchange. You know, there's a Security Exchange Commission in Cambodia, right?
Yeah.
And like they're starting to, I guess, you know, things are starting to sell, but right now it's all just like public, I guess, what do you call it? Like utility company?
Utilities.
Yeah.
I think AC Liga is on there.
Right. So just like
Chinese, some Chinese companies are on
right. So now it's just a platform for these large institutions to issue debt, right? They just need capital, right? That's what it is now. But I don't know what the future of Cambodia holds. Like, who knows? Maybe like everything's gonna start off with bonds, and then I don't know. Maybe a company in Cambodia will get big enough to get listed on a different exchange somewhere else in Asia, maybe Hong Kong or something, or China. I don't know what it is, right? So then, that's probably a good stepping stone, but I really don't know, Cambodia is so unpredictable.
Yeah.
Like anything can happen. We could have a functioning stock market like within the next 10 years.
Right.
And like, I don't know how, but
yeah. But how does that help like a country, let's say having a functional stock market?
Right.
How does that help? Is that raising more funds for the company or?
Yeah, I mean, like that's the whole point of finance, right? It's that you're able to get money today in exchange for money later or something like that. That's like the main idea. Right?
Yeah.
Access to capital. Sure, right? Like you just access to capital. We make it so that you have capital to spend. The worst thing you can do to an economy is take away the ability to borrow. Right. Or like the ability to invest, right? Because that's how people get their funds, right? They either issue debt or they get people in on their equity.
Yeah.
So like that's kind of the main idea for like why a good functioning exchange is kind of needed.
Got it.
So because you can do all the hard work and go find all your good friends to invest for you, or you can, if your company's big enough and large enough, you can go out to the capital markets and get funding that way.
Right.
So that's kind of like the main like motivation for it.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess we're kind of wrapping up our podcast. So before you go, I think our audience is kind of maybe high school students who are about to graduate, or young professionals, or students in college. What would be your advice for them? Whether if there's one thing you can let them know, whether it's finance related or just college or anything at all.
One thing that my father told me that I never took too seriously, which I really regret now, was whatever you do, look at the job market. What are they looking for?
Yeah.
Right. So I didn't do that. I just went into finance because I liked it.
Right.
It kind of worked out for me, but I wish I reevaluated that. Right. Because all my finance knowledge really comes from like 3 or 4 classes.
Yeah.
Like a semester or 2, which I could have done with any other major. You
Yeah.
could have taken in 2 semesters and be on my level. Like it's not that hard, really. So one is like, you gotta look at your job market and you gotta look at what really interests you, right? So, I guess a lot of people are like considering tech now. Computer science is a really good example of that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of memes going around where like, beep bop boop, $200,000 salary.
Yeah.
I mean, like things like that, But you can't really do it just for the money. You gotta, it's the passion for the career. You gotta want it. Yeah, that's another thing. You have to want what you want to do. Yeah, no one's gonna give it to you. You gotta go and get it.
All right, man. Well, I really appreciate your time here, and
appreciate it.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed this podcast, and if you have any questions, leave it down in the comments. We'll see you in the next episode of the Rippling Passion podcast. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.